everybody. I'm Betsy Billhorn. Welcome back to another episode of Under the Forelock. And my guests today are Sharon and Laura Wilsie, and they are the co-founders of HorseSpeak. So to give you a little background here, HorseSpeak is a system that Sharon and Laura have devised to have people better understand how horses speak to us rather than forcing us to do it the other way around. Sharon has been a professional horse trainer. She's been an intercollegiate coach and a riding instructor. And Laura is the business end of this, also been a lifelong equestrian and horse enthusiast, but keeps the business running and the home fires going. So Laura, Sharon, welcome very much to coming to the show, and thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people who are watching this probably not really aware what HorseSpeak is, other than, okay, you guys have this thing where we're going to learn the language of horses. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you got into the system, right? So you've been working with horses for a very long time. You've also done a lot of, programs around equine assisted learning and equine therapy and so forth. So how did you get to understanding this in a systematic way and putting it together?
That's a really good question. So without too much, I could go any place. There's a lot of background.
Yeah.
Basically, like so many equestrians, I arrived at a place that a lot of people arrive at, where there's what you know, and there's what you can get done, and then there's just stuff that happens, and you're like, I don't get it, or or there's this one horse that you can't reach. And because I was in the equine assisted learning program, I was working with college students who had learning disabilities. It was a specialized college. And so at this school, there was a lot of students that were on the autism spectrum, or they had some degree of nonverbal learning disability. And because of that, I had learned to specialize in helping these students to work with horses to develop their nonverbal skills. So that's a certain set of patience and eyeball, and I actually took a lot of courses in human nonverbal cues, so to better help my students. So when I started to sort of pull all these things together and say, I really need to know what I don't know. I know a lot. I'm comfortable. I was really happy with my career, but what I didn't know became like that itch that you can't, it just wouldn't. And it drove me crazy. And I actually took a sabbatical. So I stopped the work that I was doing and just dedicated myself to living with my small herd and studying them like someone would if you were going to go study gazelle,
Right.
Or elephants, or, like you would go and you would just see what you see and you wouldn't have a preconceived idea. But of course, with horses, we have a lot of preconceived ideas, because we work with them like this and you do that. So the first part was actually learning to get out of my own way. And that took the longest amount of time. And once the horses realized that I was actually trying to understand them, they started to come across that bridge and started to offer and wait and see, like, did you see me? I did it. I did it. Did you see it? And I'd be like, I think I saw it. And then I really felt like sometimes they were just patting me on the head, like, good human, very good. So over time, I'm good at sequencing. So that's just a strength that I have. Pattern recognition. So I started to recognize the patterns of communication, the bookends. How does it begin? What do they talk about? How does it end? And when you do that kind of thing, you start to understand a little bit more about their worldview and how they're actually perceiving the world, not how we think they're perceiving the world. So all of that stuff kind of combined together, and it took the better part of the rest of the year to learn how to do a close enough approximation. So you got postures, gestures, and signals, but they're horses and they have their body shape, and I've got my body shape. So I had to figure out, like, okay, if I do the signal like this, or like this, or like this, which one do you like? So there was a lot of, sort of offering it in different variables and seeing which one was the best responded to and which one they had like an empathy response to. So which one did they breathe at? or let down from. You know, they might have like responded to something but been holding their breath versus respond to something and go, yeah, that's the one. So that discernment took the better part of that year. And then I kind of vetted the information and went back to work. But for 4 years, I just taught anyone, anywhere, anyhow. I'd be like, can I show you something? I needed to practice, and I needed a large amount of people and horses to practice on.
Yeah.
So one of my jobs was working for several New England rescues, so that's great. And so by the end of that process, then, you know, we had decided, let's write a book about this. And we got Gretchen Vogel involved, who was the co-author of the first book.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history.
So there's a couple of things that you brought up with that I'm kind of curious about. So you said, okay, I took the sabbatical and I developed the system, and then, well, let me show you something. So as a trainer and a coach, right, and you're kind of in more of that traditional mode, and you've got your students and your clients in that traditional mode. So when you said, oh, hey, let me show you something, like, what was the reception of that, or how did you incorporate that? Yeah.
Really, if you blow like this, it gets great results. And they're like, you're crazy. But I'm okay. I'm one of those people, I'm okay with looking crazy, because the impact it had on horses was so profound and so immediate. And I think that the most exciting part of horse speak is that you can have a lot of effectiveness with almost nothing. You know, even if a slight change. And it's some of the stuff isn't like brand new, because there's a lot of what we might call horse whisperers or horse bistros or horse really good trainers who they get this kind of stuff and they'll say, well, you need to change your angle or this. But my mind went to, why do you need to change that angle? Exactly. Do horses change their angle? When? How? To what degree? All the time? Some of the times? So those are the kinds of things I was researching. So by the time it came around to explaining it to a person, I could say, you change your angle at this moment for this reason to get this result, right? And horse inspired information, not human inspired. It's not, you're not training the horse to do the thing. You're communicating with them, and it's intrinsic, right? It's an intrinsic response, so they communicate.
So then I guess, you know, I'm sure you have some pretty funny stories, right? Because I'm sure it was different every single time. Let me show you this, right? But it sounds like, because you said, hey, if you do this at this angle, right, or whatever, then this will happen. And then I'm sure some of that happened, and it was kind of like, right. So then did you find, you know, that one little thing, and then the reception got, well, tell me more, like people got more fascinated in the work that you were doing, or, you know, or did you still have some people that were like, this is too weird for me?
I have yet to meet anybody, even, you know, staunch, like this is how because all they have to do is observe. If you're good with horses, then you have a certain amount of feel.
Yeah.
Right? You have a certain amount of back and forth biofeedback. That's what's happening. And so if you see something, it's empirically evident because it's happening, and in your own nervous system goes, yep, that just happened.
Right.
I don't have to convince anything because it just happens.
One gal that we had met in Germany, we said, use your knuckle to greet the muzzle of your horse. And she started crying because she had felt that empathic link to her horse that she had never felt before. And
oh my God.
Absolutely everything for this gal who had been, she's probably, I don't know, close to 60 maybe, had been around horses her whole life.
Wow. So for definitely some people, there was like a profound change, right? In that. So I'll tell you, I got your book. I got through about half of it in, you know, the last 2 days, because it arrived on Tuesday. So I was like powering through it. But I tried the muzzle thingy, right? You know, and I walked in and I did that, and my horse like bug-eyed at me like, excuse me? Like, you know, and kind of what you talked about in that book, that reaction of like, you're actually like using my language, you know what I mean? Like she couldn't, you know, and it was really pretty cool. And then, like you said, though, instinctively, because one of the things that you talked about in the book of, there was the thing where you come up and you sniff on the neck, right? And say, oh, I'm your buddy. And I do that all the time. And I didn't realize that when I read it in the book, I was like, oh my God, I do this all the time, you know? So it's kind of interesting, like by osmosis, if you're around them enough, you start to imitate but not knowing, I never knew that that said a particular thing to her. You know, it was more just a thing.
There's a thing.
Yeah.
Good, right?
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Although I tried it today on purpose, and then she like lifted her head like, stop, please. It was almost like it was too much. I was trying too hard.
I'm glad you said that, because what's interesting in learning their language is also
especially a mirror, right?
Yes, and a very hot-tempered mare. Yes.
Let's just say that this is Mare's language. They own the language, and geldings like use the language.
Ah, okay. I was just about to ask you, is there like different dialects between the mare stallions and the geldings and how they present the language too? Yeah.
So mares are like, if you're going to talk, get it right.
Mm-hmm. Like everything else.
And they will start to coach, and it's a pretty amazing thing. But I will say that there's a protocol to where they say what, why, and when. It's pretty linear, actually, which is nice, thank God. But it's also circular in nature.
Okay.
So when we're greeting, like if I greet her, we shake hands. What we don't do is this.
No.
Right?
Yeah, because that would be creepy and weird. Yeah.
What we do is we'll shake hands, and then both people will do this.
Oh.
So that's touch nose, go away face.
Okay. Okay.
So getting to sniff neck, like we're not at sniff neck, we're at action.
Okay. Okay.
Right? And so then I might say, well, how are you today? And she's, well, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. And then you arrive at a place where you feel connected and comfortable. Now I might say, hey, do you want a neck massage? And now it would be appropriate.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like the first 3 G's, you did a greeting, you did a going somewhere by doing a go away face, and then you can come to the grooming ritual, which would be a sniff neck. But if you didn't have a good greeting or going somewhere aspect, then the grooming, you're not ready yet.
Interesting. Well, or, you know, I'm just curious because I've been with my horse now. She's a long yearling, and I've been with her, I think 8 or 9 years. I think she's coming up on 10. You know, there's, like you said, when you're around a horse for a very long time, you kind of get that little, you know, psychic connection. And I think she was like, okay, you're experimenting on me now, and I don't like it. Like, but yeah, it's, you know, but here's the interesting thing too, because you'd mentioned about working with autistic children, right? And autistic adults. And there is a lot of nonverbal communication. So there's, you know, you're working with nonverbal to nonverbal. And I think, you know, there's an advantage there a little bit, right? Because we don't have a lot of this going on. But what do you think the difference when you started working with, you know, children or adults who were not autistic? What were the differences there? Like, how are there differences in the way of learning the horse speak, or, you know, getting them to the place versus the autistic, or not? Or is it the same?
Well, people are people on one hand, but somebody who inherently struggles to read even some basic gestures, you're starting from a different platform. But what I loved about working with those people was that they asked fantastic questions. They asked questions, but they had a really interesting way of working around it for themselves. Like one of my autistic students, you know, when he got done with a session and he was just brimming, and I said, what was your favorite part? And he said, horses have faces. And I was like, interesting. How do I translate this? And then I thought, do you mean they have facial expressions? Because of course he's taking a course in it to better for humans in the school. And he said, yes, they have faces. They have a face. And that's when I realized, you know, one of the challenges people have is that horses have a long head, and it's hard to compress all the features of the head to see a facial expression. And he'd been able to do that, and that was his breakthrough. So from that information, I realized, oh, I need to do that for everybody, because probably most of us are just not taught to see a horse's face. We're taught to see their head.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, because and I know you know this, but I you know, it's funny because how many times when you have people who are not horse people, and, you know, you point out, and my significant other, you know, I had this and with his horse, and I'm like, you know, the lips are beginning to pooch forward. And I know that from dog training, that's not a good sign. That's annoyance. That's, you know, very subtle signal, like I'm letting you know, but he's like, what? You know what I mean? Or like the eye, sometimes people don't kind of catch it. Like we have that hard eye or the soft eye, but those are very extreme versus, you know, is there a little bit of what you call the tempting, I call it worried eye, you know, and where's that going? Right. Yeah. Interesting.
And one
Very
of
interesting.
you mentioned with the face, I mean, to continue this one comment about the student, is that he actually looked at the chin.
Really?
Yes, that was the keynote for him to recognize both human and horse facial expressions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Eye contact was too difficult for him.
Yeah.
He learned to observe chins and get a whole emotional read off of a person's chin. So when he saw the horse's chin, he was able to go, and of course, horses are only using body language. So it was easier for my students to grok meaning and have sort of a gestalt experience having just body language, because in the face of, we're saying verbal things like, hey, why don't you come with me? And it could be like, hey, why don't you come with me? You know, it could be sarcastic.
Right.
They're not reading that difference. They're just hearing the words. And so am I listening to the body language or am I listening to the words? Which one am I paying attention to? But with an animal, they're just paying attention to the body language. So it was easier.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you kind of a little, you know, zinger. So are horses sarcastic? I mean, do they have those kind of different, you know, different things in their body language, or is it just pretty, you know, clean cut? I mean, obviously they have emotions, but you know what I'm saying? There's like that nuance with sarcasm and things like that. So
based on the brain research that's been done, because I did get to spend some time with Dr. Peters, who's written some books on evidence-based horsemanship. And so we actually get to dissect a brain in his class. It was really fun. They don't have the brain capacity for strategy. Like a predator has brain capacity for strategy because you have to strategize hunting, but a prey animal has more space given to proprioception. So they're more watching micro movements that you're doing and responding and reacting to them out of like a defensive state. So that's more, and so it could feel to us.
They can't imagine either.
They can't imagine, so they can't future.
Okay.
Tuesday, like a dog or a wolf might bury a bone and then go back and get it in a month.
Yeah.
The horses don't save a flake of hay for next year.
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah. Oh.
So they don't have the strategy area that predators have. But in replace of that, they have fantastic map making abilities, and they have like twice the proprioception. So they see you moving before you even make the movement, and that's what they're responding to. So when you start to have mirroring is the first step that I teach people, because it's pretty safe, it's pretty easy, and you do it from the other side of a fence. So there's no,
yeah.
And what we're doing is kind of getting our mirror neurons to turn back on. They were there when we were little kids and we learned how to mimic our adults and stuff.
Right.
But now that we're adults, we don't really, you know, we have our way, and that's what we do. So when you mirror a horse, you're sort of opening that back up again, and you pick one body part at a time, and you just, you know, so just the right front leg, and I'm just going to do whatever he does with that, or I'm just going to mirror their face in my face. So I'm just going to do stuff. And what people say is after 5 minutes, they're exhausted because the horse is doing so much. And when you pair that with the meaning inherent in the gesture, it's like, holy cow, they're chatting all day long. They never shut
up. You know, and that's really, God, that's such a revelation, because I mean, you know, honestly, a lot of people think that horses are just like zoned out half the time, or, you know, there's not much going on there. You know, I think I heard somebody say, or I read it, like they have the brain of the size of a potato, you know, and clearly implicit in that. Yeah.
Brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have bigger cerebellum, way bigger.
So their balance.
Their balance and proprioception is there from day one, and ours doesn't even come in till like 9 months or something. So.
Wow. Interesting. So the autistic kids, the thing that's interesting about that is the eye contact is a big thing, right? And we know that, you know, horses being prey animals, direct eye contact. Now, at least what I've learned, you know, direct eye contact is not that we stare. We have eyes in the front and we stare, right? And so they don't like that. So when you're coming at them and you're like really staring them down, that's not good. So how does, say, I don't want to say normal, but a non-autistic person, right, who we're going to walk up, right, and there's all cultural things around that. We make direct eye contact. That's like, hey, I see you and I respect you, and so forth. So how does that work to kind of break that, right? When you're teaching, because that's such an ingrained, we do it all the time. So how do you get people to break out of that cycle?
Really good question. I'm so glad you asked
Yeah.
it, because actually horses make a ton of eye contact.
Huh.
They're making eye contact like when we were in school and we were passing notes and we didn't want the team. We're like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Or you see somebody you have a crush on. Yeah. And you're like, yeah.
they're making so much eye contact. If you're a prey animal, then your best bet is to have a lot of signals that don't make any noise. Eye contact is one of those signals, and breath messages is another one. So just the way they're breathing has a whole sequence of meaning in it. So when they're making eye contact, they can see around themselves peripherally almost all the way, and all they need to do is turn the angle of their head a little bit to finish that circle. We see directly in front. So if we're staring, it's a driving action. But if we're soft focusing and using our peripheries, it's a contact point. So they prefer for you to actually be looking at their eyes softly. That's
Okay.
the way around it.
Because they're reading the facial expression. So if you are staring, then you're probably clenching your teeth.
There's a whole bunch of other things
therefore,
happening.
you look like a biter.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like attacking me with your face.
Yeah. And, I hate to bring the dog analogy, but I've spent a lot of time, doing behavioral training with dogs and things like that, and for rescue and stuff. But there's that, I get you, because there's that stare that the dog starts to have that's very dominant, that begins a fight, right? Or they get fixated.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't realize, as people, it's the same thing, right? Because we're, I'm walking right up to you. We're going to do something, right? Yeah.
Look, we grit, we start to, and when we're concentrating,
We do the same thing.
we hold our breath and grit our teeth.
Yeah.
So to
Okay.
a horse, that looks like a biter.
Really? Okay.
Like a sign of stress. So they're like, why are you so stressed? I guess we're stressed now.
And also, if you're my leader
Yeah.
and you're showing signs of stress, there must be a problem.
Yeah. And, it's so that this is really, really, man, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I interviewed a guy, Paolo, earlier on, and he does breath work, right? And I had taken a class with him, but he'd also talked about when you're really stressed out, you go, this is so great. Like that's, this is over, or I don't have to deal with this, right? You literally have to say it. It's kind of goofy. I didn't like doing it in the beginning, but now I do it all the time. But when I took Dory out this morning and we did a little hack around our property. We have like 300 acres, but I wasn't quite sure what was going to go on. And, so I was doing that, because she got, of course she was a little vigilant a few times, and I would just do my, hey, look, right. We're cool. It's a nice day out, whatever. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I didn't think about it from a coming in the barn type of standpoint where, I'm coming off of a long day, or I'm coming to the barn because I'm going to ride. My ride time's at 3:00. Right. We got an hour and 15 minutes and whatever. And so, yeah. And you are definitely, I always thought about it as an energy thing, but I didn't think about it as a all your muscles and everything, and that you were holding your breath. So interesting.
I like to say that there's four stages of getting in with the horse. It's a fun acronym. It's I, and N. So I is the initiation. Initiation and introduction. And so that's coming into the barn is your initiation process.
And I love the thing of like, when we show up is when the lesson starts.
Mm-hmm.
It's not when you get to an arena or whatever. It's as soon as you are on your approach, they can see you
or smell you or feel you.
Yeah.
So that part, and then there's the introduction, which is the greeting and hello, and let's have, so it's connect and respect is the two top things they're interested in. They want to connect and they want to show mutual respect. And when they yield their head away, they're showing respect for your bubble. So if a horse is like really in your face because they're super friendly, that's also going to stress them out that you didn't say to them, hey, let's have some mutual respect. It's just a touch on the cheek. It's not a
Okay.
private way
It's not
or
stab away.
stab,
Yeah.
smack, or freak out. It's just, hey, let's have mutual respect. And most horses that aren't like troubled horses is its own category. But most horses, you do that and they go, there you go. All right. And they'll even like leave it, like, look at me, respecting your.
They'll do it extra big. Yeah.
So happy. Right.
The biggest value, one of the biggest values is the personal space, you know, because they're not puppies. They're not tangled up with each other. Horses are like, they have their space in case they run.
So when you show that you understand the personal space thing, then I have this, like you're talking about helping other people, I have this thing, I just call it the 6-inch rule. And it's not literally 6, you have to get a thing and measure 6. It's just saying, this is too close. This is more okay. So let's just imagine that's 6 inches between me and the horse. And if I'm not paying attention to it and they lean in, then they're like, uh-oh, you're not paying attention to the 6 inch rule. They'll get
closer and closer.
Because they're like, where are you? Where'd you go? Where's your boundary? It's right here. My boundary's right here. And they go, they relax. Mm-hmm. Because for them, the next two ends are negotiation and navigation. And so they want to negotiate who's following, who's leading, how are we going to do this? What mood are we in today? There's a lot of negotiation. And then when that's complete, now we can navigate. Now we can go out in the world and do something together. But if those stages are weird for them and awkward, then they're like, I guess I'll go with you, but you're in now and you're tense because the horse got too close, or then you said, my horse didn't get close enough, come here, get closer. And they're like, what do you want?
Yeah. Well, and and that's a kind of interesting bit. Sorry, my timer fell down. It doesn't matter. And so, because and I'll take this back to dogs, because there was an anthropologist and sociologist that wrote this really great book about primate behavior and canine behavior and why that is okay, and it creates huge problems. People get bitten and all these things. But as I hear you guys talk about this moving for space, or that the horse leans in, I think I'd be curious on your take on this from a primate point of view, from a human being point of view, because that moving away thing is not intuitive for us, right? Like, I know a lot of people will see if the horse moves away, oh, they don't like me. Oh, they hate me, they're in a bad mood. And then, when they see that the horse is very snuggly and friendly, that's a positive. Or when the horse leans on you, oh, the horse is leaning on me like, oh, I like you, right? Versus, and I was taught this pretty early on, but that is definitely a violation of your boundary, right? That's a horse that points the shoulder and leans like this does not respect you at all. So, but it's like these, how, again, I guess, like, how do we break those? Again, it's a primate behavior, right? It's a cultural behavior, and getting people to understand that that's not, that this, because I always thought when Dory did this, I was like, oh, okay, all right, she's kind of just telling me to, you know what I mean?
Well, here's an interesting, that 5 things just came to my head, so I'll try.
Yeah, sorry, and I asked like 18 questions in one question. Yeah.
No, I totally get it.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, we have to define our boundary more clearly than just using our shoulders. So in human culture, you can just use your shoulder. And this is a way to define the boundary, because we all grew up sitting in chairs in school. There was space created artificially around us, and you're in your bubble with your chair in the school, and don't cross into Bobby's bubble, because then you're gonna get in trouble and all this stuff. So we learned how to stand in line and do these things, and we learn how to create.
Don't touch each other.
Don't touch. And so we've learned how to keep our hands down. But the challenge with working with a horse is that we have intrinsic messages in our hands that we use willy-nilly. We're not clear with them. So we go, hey, but that doesn't really mean anything to them because it was a reaction.
And then to define what she did what we call an X posture by doing a pushing away, and then went back to O, which posture. Is a welcoming posture.
So that's very confusing.
Yes. So the horse, I left, and now you told me to come back. To them, our neutral often looks like O, which is a signal of welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So the simple, and this is really lucky, watching horses hold position for each other and hold, like the mentor horse holds a position and the others move around. And mentors are great because they are steady, they're stoic, they hold a position psychologically for the whole herd where they keep everyone calm, and they can just look with one eye and everyone moves, you know. So the being to emulate the most is a mentor horse. But then I said, okay, but they can do it. They don't have hands. They're using how they adjust their head and their neck and the angle of the bubble that they took up with it. Well, we have hands, and I can't, I mean, I guess I could do this, you know, but that's really awkward and weird.
It's kind of tough, yeah.
And no one else is going to do it. So, but we have hands, and we don't use them well because we were taught to do this. So when you want to define your bubble, there's a practice time where you engage your hold hand. And we have this because if someone says, they come in and they run into the house, they start going, blah, 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 you might go, hold on a minute. That's what it means. It means, hold on a minute. I've created a boundary. I have a bubble. Don't pop my bubble. And so intrinsically, this means this to a horse as well. And I've done it with wild horses. And they go, oh, look at that. But you also can use your hold hand as a scan to go up and down the buttons of their body to say, I see this one. I see that one. I see, because we have to make up the fact that we are vertical and they're horizontal. And they accept that as, and I'm getting to do this with the wild tarpons in Germany last year. They totally, you know, I did this at the girth and this little mare said, oh yes, of course. You want to go for a walk with me? And the game warden was like, stop it. You're not supposed to do
because they're supposed to be wild, right?
You know, she'd never seen, we were crawling through the grass together. We're having a great time, but she's like, I got to get that book. So we have intrinsic messages that our brain already gets. So all your proprioception, your breath message, your eye message, your internal and external meaning line up as soon as you go, hey there. It just does it. So now you use it on purpose. It's a little awkward and mechanical at first. You're like, hey there, I think I mean this. But with a horse, if you just put your palm up and you're like, here's my edge. That's all it is. Here's my edge. And if they push into it, then it's prong fingers, just to be a little bit of an uncomfortable spot. And then when they go back to it, okay, very good, thank you. And one of the keys is to use space as a reward. And people think, I have to make the horse move out of my space and it's a one-way street. But actually, mentor horses, leader horses, sentry horses give space back to the follower to say, well done. So they will then over and well done. Good job.
A great example of being able to see something that Sharon is talking about is on YouTube under Sharon Wilsie channel. And it's called the Wild Conics of the Netherlands. And she decodes a mentor stallion and how he really puts up with a lot of play activity from a beta stallion and how he just does one action,
one step,
and boom, that was it. And, you know, we have, in regards to the space invasion, a lot of times folks do go here on the corner of the mouth to
which
say,
is play.
Move out of space, out of my space.
Yeah.
And they always come back because they want to play. And when you see this video, you can see that the beta stallion's like nip, 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 and then the stallion's like, stop it.
To the cheek.
Yeah, to the cheek, which is go away.
And
face.
then literally holds him on the bridge of his nose and says, you need to just stay still now. And that beta stallion goes, yes, sir.
Yep.
Just stay still.
So if you need to ask the horse to keep his head out of your space, go to the cheek. Right at the ring of the halter. Use your finger and just say, excuse me.
And then move over one step to say, well done.
Yep.
Good job.
Yeah.
That's how you then say good job. Because if you say move over and then you're still standing here.
Well, right. Yeah. It's very, and you know, it's so fascinating because like all this is very gentle. It's very easy, right? You know, but you know, how many times have we seen in the barn where the horse is leaning in or the face comes over and maybe sometimes they push the lip, but more often it's a whop, you know what I mean? Like, so talk to me a little bit about, you know, stuff we've all seen in the barn that's still pretty common, right? It's the shouting, it's the slapping, right? You know, it's the doing kind of, you know, that's more extreme, but I have seen that occasionally where somebody's punched the horse. So what kind of affect does that really have on the horse? I mean, obviously it's not very effective other than to scare the shit out of them, right? But
creating a startle response. So when you any of that, it's a high intensity X.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm talking about is a low intensity X, so a level 1. Level 1 is just like me, right? So if you were to aim, if anyone at a barn, anywhere, anyhow, was just to try to have their motions be the lowest level of intensity first and give it a minute. Because one of the other things is that we think we want dog-like responses from horses, and they don't process the same way. Dogs process like this because they're hunters.
Right.
Sit down, up, go, deep, 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 left, right, left. I've done herding dogs, and I wanted to race the Iditarod, so I was practicing with sled dogs at the point. And you need quick responses, right? I did hunting dogs, so I get it about like that sharp. And we like that because we think that way too. But horses, you give a request, it has to go all the way through all their buttons, because when they're self-talking, they scan their body. If you ask them to move over, they got to go, okay, I got 4 feet. If I do what you're literally asking me to do, I'm going to do this, and that makes me unbalanced. So I think that I want to stretch out one of my hind legs, reach over with my outside front leg, and then bring this leg over, because then I'll be in balance. But I needed to sort that out. And you're like, just do it. And so they're like, oh, okay. So.
yeah. And then we get into these things, right? Or the other thing you see is commonly when you're trying to lift the hooves to pick the hooves, right? And, again, it's a little unusual because I was taught, let the horse find their balance to do that. Like they've got to actually, you can't ask them while they're going to fall over. But, and I'll actually watch her, and sometimes it takes time to get her feet, and she tries it once and no, and I'm not slapping her or getting pissed off with it. Right. But you see people like, they want that immediately. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good thing to know.
For thousands of years, horses have been a vehicle. And so you don't really care what the vehicle feels. You just want the vehicle to be obedient and do the thing.
Function.
Just do the function.
Mm-hmm.
And now, why do we have horses? We have horses because we like them, because we want a relationship with them. We want something. We're looking for something. But the model of training is based on generations of using horses as a vehicle. So the model of training and what we're seeking,
or making war machines,
or making all of that, right? Well, it doesn't, right? So the old school, you are my machine, will say move over, because that's, in those days, that's what you did. But if you want a relationship, you want to build rapport, because you do dressage, so that balance is everything to a horse. It's everything. If you want mental and emotional balance, you got to have physical balance. So if you do fast action, you create a startle response, and they're not going to be balanced. And now you've triggered, they're sympathetic. They're now a prey animal reacting to you instead of present partner responding to you.
And that is the fascinating thing, though, about horses being used for war, is that the folks that train them lived with them. And so that they were able to build this natural rapport. They were there 24/7, 365.
And cavalry slept with their horses.
Yeah. And that was like, they were able to build that relationship. And depending on the situation, folks nowadays, they either live with their horse or they have to go visit.
Right.
So it's like,
but it's a different quality.
It is a different quality.
And that's why, you have these old cavalry stories, and like they made that, there was a great Facebook picture that went around of cavalry officers and shaped the form of a head. They all stood with different colors and fallen horses. And there's a great love between them because they really were, but the advantage of a cavalry too, is you've got a herd of horses mentality. And you got herd mentality.
Right.
So you've got that.
Well, and I think also too, like, because Laura, you were mentioning, okay, well, you either have to go visit them or they live on your place. But we, even without the cavalry or as the transportation, I mean, you were with and your horse was very much part of your daily life, which is not true today. So even if you're lucky enough to have horses on your property, you're not in, you're right. They're pets-ish, right? You have a relationship with them. You're looking for something. And I think that's the thing that's kind of reversed, right? Where, this was, for lack of a better term, a tool, and the relationship got built, through that work together, versus now it's like, oh, we have to have a relationship. you know,
Yeah.
and that's a very different dynamic.
Show up at 3:00 and it's like our time. Hey, let's go. And they're having beer and pizza with their friends. And they're like, what the heck?
Yeah.
We got to do the thing.
Yeah, we were just talking about this the other day at the barn. Like, you would never walk up to somebody who was eating their dinner and being like, hey, and pulling them by the arm. Hey, we're going now, and you're going to go work out for an hour and, you know, and do what I say, right? And it's just interesting that, like, if you took the word horse out and you put the word human in, some of the things that we do are just crazy. You would never do that to another person.
And that's
what
I've been really letting folks explore, is having enrichment with their horse while they're eating. And that when they are grazing, whether it's hay or grass or what have you, there are moments they're greeting you. They're giving you an ear. They're giving you an eye. They're giving you a nostril.
They're looking at you across the grass.
They're seeing you. There's no doubt that, yeah, they're like, hey, but I'm having a really nice clover right now, so give me a moment and I'll be ready.
Yeah, you know, I'm just chilling out. It's nice and warm. It's sunny. You know, I'm napping or whatever. So I know you guys give clinics and you teach horse speak other than just have the books. So for somebody who's brand new to this, I mean, obviously they're making the first step and they're saying, okay, well, I'm going to go check this out. But then, like, how do you introduce these concepts, you know, to newbies, right, who are just learning this? Like, do you do it with people, right? We've been talking about different examples, or how does that kind of work in a nutshell?
Basically, I start with a lot of the stuff we just talked about, just sort of contrast and get everyone psychologically on the same page. Because like you said, if you're here, if you're interested in this kind of thing, something inside of you is like, I don't want to hit my horse anymore, but I don't know how to make it safe. I don't want to hit my horse anymore, but I don't know how to make him go. I don't, you know, so there's lots and lots and lots of people who don't want to do these things, but they don't know what else to do.
Mm-hmm.
So start with that. I go into mirroring right away, because the more you can mirror, the more everyone in the class is having, maybe they're sitting on the grass and just doing it in their head. But we'll select a couple of horses and we'll bring them close, we'll throw some hay so they have something to do. And I'll just say, mirror their nostrils, mirror their hind left leg, mirror whatever it is, but go there and really look, don't stare at it like a predator, but go there and really
and breathe.
Yeah, you know, blink and breathe. Really sort of absorb like how the motion, the feel, the timing, the rhythm, the sound of the chewing,
are they snatching the grass, or are they really just nibbling and stuff? Because that's all different meaning. It's like really breaking down every little tiny twiggle.
We have another video on YouTube called The Dinner Party, and that goes over that.
Okay.
The thing is that then conceptually, usually what most people are struggling with, like you've already said, because the primate to dog thing, and we think that touch is how we're sharing affection. And for a lot of horses, touch is not their primary source of affection. Space is their primary source of affection. I like you so much, I want to stand next to you and take a nap. I want to hang with you and and they will groom, they'll do that, but it's not their go-to. So they know we have hands, they like a scratch, but only to a point. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I usually do is say, okay, this is how we're going to build the bonding you're really looking for. And it's by understanding where your bubble is. You got to know where your bubble is before you try to tell the horse what to do with his bubble. So find your bubble and walk around with your hands like this and move in and out. Sometimes we'll weave around a whole herd of horses, just, you know, like in a serpentine, having our bubble. And the horses love it. They go, wow, look at, and they get in line and follow. And sometimes a mare, usually it's a mare, will come over and start going, hello, and greet every single person.
Oh, wow.
Every single person. There's been 30 people, and there's been a mare gone all the way around, greeted and stop because someone's not breathing, or someone's core is contracted, or someone's having fear, or if people are sitting, if you've got your legs crossed, they don't like it. They'll
like start nudging your knee.
Nudging your knee. Hey, this is wrong. This is bad balance. Fix it.
And it happens a lot, like every time.
Every time.
Every single time.
Yep.
I'm going to have to go do that in a video. I'm going to go put a chair down and cross my legs. We'll see what happens. Yeah. And and we've talked about this word fear a few times right now. And you're talking about this exercise where you guys are in this herd and you're going through, or maybe people are actually sitting down. And I mean, do you have people that, I mean, when you're finished with that exercise that they're feeling a little better, they see that there's a different way or, so it sounds like it happens fairly quickly because that experience is fairly profound.
Yeah. I'm really banking on the fact that horses love it when you start to show up in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easy biofeedback. So as soon as your body starts to go, this is good, this feels good, I like this, I'm getting both of my needs met, I'm feeling bonded to this animal, and I'm not feeling invaded, because we don't actually want to feel invaded either.
Right.
And
right.
so then realizing how can we then sort of bump bubbles, how can our bubbles be near each other, and how can we merge bubbles, and then how can we separate? So my space, your space is the first, whole series of lessons, and defining that then as you go down the horse's body and learn what the different buttons are. They may have different feelings about my space, your space. One button might be really nervous and another might be totally fine. They might even scratch a button and then look at you. And basically they're saying, I want to talk to you about this. Can we see the horse? I want to talk to you about this button. So this is my friend from Germany made this for me.
Oh, I love it. It's got the little buttons on it. Yeah.
So let's say the girth button, this is important because we like to ride. The girth button is also the mommy button. So babies line up their eye right here so they can stay in between her legs when they're first learning to move with her. And so when you see moms and babies moving around, the baby's oriented to here, and they'll actually look right here and then start going with mom. So this is a really emotional button for them. And when they line up to sort of bulge their ribs at another horse, they're like, line up with me, let's go. We're together. We're in this together. And if they do that to you, so if they're moving quietly along and they they scratch at their girth and then look at you, they're like, we're in this together.
Because they kind of do a scoop with their shoulder to be like, hey, come on with me.
Which is different from the bulging shoulder, which is
right.
Where the hell is the bubble? So the shoulder button, this is the backup button. This is the shoulder button. This is what they use to say, you're my buddy. So sometimes when they keep shouldering in, what they're saying is, I want you to be my buddy, but this doesn't feel good. I want you to be my buddy, but this doesn't feel good. And sometimes what they're doing is feeling scared and like, I got to take you with me.
Okay.
They'll do that on each other. If spooking happens, one horse might bump another horse in the shoulder and be like, we got to go, but you come with me. So there's lots of reasons why that shoulder thing's happening.
Interesting. So then, so now we're talking about being under the saddle and the girth is over the girth button. So how does that work? Like, I mean, what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, first you're pulling a girth up there and they're like, yikes, you're girthing my most emotional button.
Oh, and that, would that explain why a lot of horses maybe are girthy or do the,
Because it's super meaningful, super emotional, and very full of nerves.
And you're jumping buttons because unless you have, practice a little bit of horse speak, you're just going, you're not
straight into the girth.
You're just going right to the girth, but you need to have rapport with the other buttons
because how
until
they
you line up to the girth.
This is number one. This is two, which is play. Don't play with the play button.
Yeah.
Because that's just,
you're asking for trouble.
You don't want that. This is the move your head over button. I call it go away face. So it's like go away face, right? But it also can become here face. So you pull a magic string and they'll
turn the key, come to me.
They can't resist. They look at you and go, no kidding. And then they want to come over. Mm-hmm. So these buttons of the front end are the getting in there buttons. These are the buttons that they use to define space, to define hierarchy, to get connected, to figure out basic movement, have some balance, have some boundaries, have some bonding. Right. Then they go to girth. All right, we're ready. Line up. Let's go.
Yeah, and the button is also an intimate button. This wouldn't be part of the hierarchy. It would be face, neck, shoulder. This is right at the strip of the halter. And so that's another mommy button. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes, depending, especially, we meet a lot of horses we've never met before, and it's very fascinating. You can't jump the gun and go right there because they're like, no,
we're not there.
We're not there. You just try to jump to third base and we haven't even got to
yeah. I was gonna say there's so many dating analogies, you know what I mean? It's so true. And I
just while we're on the subject, they'll greet you with the front end because this is how they determine hierarchy and negotiation, all kinds of stuff. But they're a long body. They also want to greet you with the hind end. And we've been taught forever that this only means they want to kick you.
Yes.
It doesn't, because the hip button is how they hook onto another horse and say, follow me. Or a weaker horse might go in front of a stronger horse and say, please drive me and protect me from behind. So it has two meanings, follow me and protect me. The joint here, the stifle joint, this is the yield button. This is the one you talk to about don't kick. Because when they're grazing, you've ever seen two horses and one's got his muzzle right here and you're like, I can't believe you're that close to that horse's hind leg. But they'll look right here and this horse, 90% of the time, will step over.
Interesting.
Because
Okay.
the one said, hey, I'm back here, don't kick. This is how they have no kick agreements. If one horse is going past another horse, they'll step under. And it's only one step. It's not many, 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 many steps because that unbalances them. But this is how they say, okay, yeah, I will kick.
Or even a lean.
Even a lean.
Yeah.
And
that's
Interesting.
the big thing that we have, because we are actually working still on the third book, but passing it on Monday. But a lean means everything.
Everything.
We have this concept of a therapy backup, and I'm like, maybe we should change it to therapy leaning, because we're looking for the smallest try. And we actually did a session earlier today with a gal, and it's like, she did it. She did the therapy backup, but the gal is looking for a little bit more. And we're like, no, she leaned, and then you could see all the process going through her entire body through to the tail. And it was like, and it had profound meaning.
Profound emotional content.
Unbelievable.
So speaking of emotions, we're not talking about anthropomorphizing, but
Right.
horses, mammals have emotional ranges because they have to form bonds and they need
Right.
to connect and they need to know who's friend or foe. So they have the same range of emotions that we do, but they have them in a horse way, not a human way. But when they store feelings, they store them here because the tail is what expresses emotion. Right? They do all this stuff. They clamp it, they flag it, they swish it, this is how
Oh, yeah.
emotion. So if they got a stuck emotion, they don't know what, they got confused, they don't understand, they got overwhelmed, it gets stored here, and then you get all that weird pelvic distension and the roaching lumbar spine and all the and sticky icky stuff. And this is the follow me button, mama button. This is where softness happened with mother and foal. And here's feeling, but this is craniosacral.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So if you've hyper collected, you've also limited what they can feel.
Interesting.
Isn't it?
And, yeah. And then, I mean, I could geek out on this forever, but yeah, like, it makes you wonder about like when we want to put the head carriage down and things like that. Yeah. Yeah. So we mentioned kind of, I think it's not that we've been dancing around it, but I think kind of there's a thread here of, how do I say it? I think there's people who want to have very emotional relationship with a horse. And I actually wrote a microblog on this the other day of, that we want this, fantasy, right? Like, how we think about dolphins is probably the closest I can approximate, because everybody knows what I'm talking about when I mention dolphins, right? But it's like, this
Black stallion.
yeah, this woo-woo spiritual, whatever you want to say, this profound, like, transcendent experience, right, that we assign on the horse, right? But so curious about that, right? So we have the people you've mentioned. Okay, well, I'm really afraid, I want to, but right, there's a different way. But then I think you've got some other people who are like, I want to have this very profound spiritual relationship. I want to have these like transcendent things happen to me every second when I'm with a horse. And at the end of the day, it's an animal too, right? So what about like that kind of a person, and maybe like the body language that they're using or how they're approaching the horse, and kind of problems that are happening with that?
That often I find is the case of someone who's too O.
Okay.
They're so like wanting the empathy to happen that there's no boundaries at all. And so I think one of the challenges to anybody, wherever they're coming from, because even people who are like, I want to get to the show and I want to get a blue ribbon. Well, the horse isn't going to get the blue ribbon if they look like crap, and they're going to look like crap if they're all stressed out and emotional. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
self-carriage is also in self-pride.
Yes. Yeah.
Carriage is self-pride. pride is a feeling. If you want to achieve that feeling state, you need to pay attention to what's going on. And so people who are only paying attention to the feeling state can sometimes get run over, because the first need horses have is for boundaries. They need boundaries for bonding. I explained that boundaries is like the soup bowl, and the bonding is the soup. So if you pour your soup through a strainer, you don't have anything.
That's an excellent analogy. Yeah. Yeah. No. And I mean, so what do you think of, so I've also heard this expressed as, you know, there's a number one and there's a number two, right? And you don't want to be the number two, and it was never expressed in a way of like, oh, number two is bad and you need to be dominant. But if you're not number one, you're going to become number two very quickly. And so I'd be curious on your perspective on that as well.
Well, here's what's interesting about that. It's, I like to say 51%, 49%. So we're having, you know, I'm respecting the horse up to 49%, and then I have the final say, you know, and a lot of that is.
The 1% goes to the lawyer when you're in a
I like to say that I want to be in a relationship with a horse where I can hear them, I can respect their opinion, I can consider their opinion seriously, because I can tell the difference between acting out and the horse is actually trying to give me a piece of advice. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, horses that want to turn around on the trail. And my horse Rocky, because he's a wild breed, when I first got him, everything was hard. He's the reason that I learned this, because nothing worked. And he'd look at me like, you better bring it, because I'm not giving it. You got to figure it out. And so he was my door opener to all this stuff. And now when I ride him, he's like, it's mystical. I do have the mystical, because I can take off my scarf and put it around his neck in the middle of winter and go off in the woods and we have a great time. But one day he says, you know, I can't go down this trail. And I'm like, no, really, I want to go down this trail because I'm so excited. And he's like, no, really. And he sent the feeling. He had a feeling in his body, and it translated through my body of almost like a porcupine feeling. It was like, you know, this real, and I thought, wow, he really means it. Okay, all right, fine, let's turn around. That's what, you know, you really mean it. And I later found out, later that day, the neighbor's bull had gotten loose and was there.
Wow. So that's really cool.
Saved my life, right?
Yeah.
So that's the importance of knowing the 49%. I want to hear them. And if I had said go forward, he would have, you know, but he had to do something, you know, he really respected me to stay there and say, Sharon,
I'm serious.
We
gotta turn around now.
Yeah, and you hear these stories too, right? Where people are out and the horse won't, they plant and it's like there's a bear, you know, just over the ridge or whatever. And yeah, that's so true.
Push them through, and then you get dumped, and then you're walking.
Right.
Because their sense perception is way heightened than ours, you know.
So if you want to have the horse be as committed to you, right, as you are to them, then pushing for obedience does not form commitment.
Right.
They're two opposed. One is sort of tyranny, and the other is working for a partnership. And working for a partnership, the key word is working. So you have to bring the best of yourself. And I think what the challenge is that people can't always tell, is my horse doing an acting out vice thing, or is this a real thing? And one of the beauties of horse speak is you learn to analyze all that stuff so that you can start seeing it for yourself, and you start to be able to tell the difference. And I will say that 90% of acting out and vices is displacement of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that would make sense, because I mean, you know, you're creating a situation where the horse is anxious. We're giving our primate language, which is confusing, and they have nowhere to put it, right? Or they're doing it, and then we escalate in a certain way, right? Because we don't understand. And so, yeah, no wonder, right? So, yeah, that's
you know, you're a dog person, so we're more intrinsically comfortable with dogs, because eyes in front loves to hunt. You roll a ball, we'll both chase it, you know, so we have certain body language messages that are similar enough.
And we live with them in the house, and so you're able to be like, the dog's at the door, so we must have to go out. Like there's all these little
I could do a whole hour show on how I would have to do under the ears or something, but yeah, I could go on and on about that. Yeah. Well, and because Sharon, you've worked with dogs. So
And the next book's supposed to be dog speak.
Yeah.
dog speak. There you go. Yeah. 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 But it's the same kind of thing though, where, yeah, you might be with a dog all the time. And I see this with my significant other. I see this with other visitors in the house. Right. And it's the same thing, primates are very touchy. We want to touch all the time. And dogs, they like to have some affection, but not so much. Hugging is a disaster, right? That's like, and there's so many reasons. We could talk about dog speak later, but I think it's the same thing where it creates anxiety, and there's all those tiny little tells. And people, you hear this all the time. Well, my dog never bit before. I don't know why that happened. This never happened before. And there were probably 1,000 tells over a lot of time that right, and things that sometimes we get confused, because I have this, which will lead me into a horse speak question. So a lot of times people confuse the panting. And my dog is, is pit bull breed. And so we got the big gargoyle smile. And I know panting, which is panting from stress, and this happy smiley face, like the lolling tongue, and I'm super happy. But I think, we also get into this thing. And again, I'd be interested in your point of view, not to do Mythbusters or whatever here, but, this whole thing about the licking and chewing, the relaxing of the jaw, the yawning, right? And so sometimes, that's being held up as the golden standard of relaxation. Although I have observed that there are times my mare is yawning because she's trying to be not stressed out, not she's yawning because I'm relaxed. So I'd be curious on your point of view from a horse speak point of view on that.
Yeah, I would agree with that there's yawns that are, I'm trying to let this go. And there's yawns that are, I am letting this go.
Yeah.
And I think some of the stuff that we teach is based on how horses reintegrate themselves. And they have very specific postures and motions that they do to kind of get back in their body when they've had like an out-of-body experience because they get so stressed. There's literally the backup button. They'll actually touch it, which is hard for them to do.
But they'll put their head down like.
They'll touch it like this. They'll also go and put the greeting button, which is full of nerves, on an object of some kind and sort of roll their lips around. And those are two things.
Or they might even strap the jump up button, which we also call the vulnerability button, there as well.
And they might reach around and touch themselves there. So they have very specific access points to be like, I got to get back in my body. And if you work with those specific buttons in a very conscious way, not like I'm trying to cue it way, but a very conscious way, you start to trigger them to have layers and layers and layers of release that they do for themselves. So we've had some really great and fun conversations with Masterson people who that's what they're doing is working with.
But you don't have to touch them. That's the thing. You can do this by your palm, aiming at the backup or at the vulnerability button, jump up button, and just, we call it rock the baby, to sway back and forth within yourself. And you're just bringing a little attention to that spot and be like, hey, I'm chilling. Like, can you chill? And it's been profound. We've had some really epic experiences because of, this coronavirus thing. We,
as everybody has, right?
Different anymore. But we're doing Zoom meetings with folks, and Sharon's like, yeah, we'll just put your whole hand up at the go away face button or at the neck, and you can see and everything means something. Yeah. And that is like the keynote of horse speak. Everything means something. And also having the how interesting attitude when the horse does something. Oh, he bumped in my shoulder. How interesting.
How interesting. What? I wonder where I am.
Yeah.
Am I standing funny?
Yeah.
As my core flaming at the horse, or
am I way too close?
Am I way too close? So check me first, body scan me first. And I'm not saying a horse should be pushy and all that kind of stuff. I like horses that have excellent manners. What I've discovered is that they do have excellent manners. It's intrinsic. It's part of their nature.
And they're just trying to say, hey, can you have some self-reflection a little bit? And what are you doing?
Can you stop being an ape for 2 seconds?
Yeah, well, right. So Wow. And it's funny because like there's just so many life lessons in this too as well, right? Because we're in people's space all the time. I was having a conversation with another person about your cylinders, right? Your cylinder, like, do you bring it in, you push it out? Are you in somebody else's cylinder and irritating them? But I was smiling when you said the 49, you like the 4951 because I don't know if you know who Gary Vanderchuk was, but he just posted something about the 4951 in business of, being kind, right? That how you treat people and being kind is, and that he likes that better than, let's go after and be captains of the universe and make money and buy stuff, right? So it's so interesting how these translate into like life stuff, right, versus just horse stuff. So I'm becoming more and more convinced as I talk to a lot of people who are doing all kinds of coming at working with horses in a lot of different ways, but we always come back to this thing of you're talking about excellent manners and body language. Other people talk about energy, other people talk about breath. But it's really kind of knowing yourself and having excellent manners within yourself, right? Yeah. And, it just always seems to be coming back to that, which is really, really fascinating.
First things in the book in horse speak is the concept of zero, which is an inner calm. And
yes.
So, there are moments when we do have to be like
up the intensity,
like but without anger. That's
right.
thing, and it's a big practice for people depending on your different background is to do that big energy without getting mad. And it's like even just hitting a ball. Sharon does the demo in the book of hitting a ball over your head. There are a lot of
with a stick,
yeah.
Not the ball.
But a lot of folks have a hard time just doing that one activity without getting mad, and there's nothing happening. You're just hitting the ball.
Right.
And so, and just that's why it's like your intensity goes up and then you go down, and it's fine.
And so it's practicing raising and lowering arousal levels because, and here's the neat thing. So horses seek self-regulation. They want to self-regulate. If you give them systems that say, let's practice self-regulation as a thing, let's practice, we can go to a safety object and you can rub your nose on it. Let's practice working in a small chessboard. They see the world, I like to explain it, they see the world like it's a chessboard. And there's my resource, and here's my happy spot, and here's my safe spot, and that's the scary spot. And maybe that's the arena. So the scary spot is this, so how do you help them with the scary spot? Understanding their perspective. But if you set them up so that everything you're doing is about aiding their ability to do self-regulation, then they start to choose self-regulation. But if you don't set them up that way, because they don't strategize, they don't know intrinsically how to do that for themselves.
So is that like a learned, is it become kind of like a not a muscle memory, but it's like a learned response that...
Yeah, it's a model of behavior that you have to demonstrate. And what's cool about that is studying large groups of horses and those that create well-being for the rest of the herd. And they're kind of just born with a little extra perception on how to create well-being for others. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of them. So, you had a herd of 20 horses, you only need one mentor. So the others are like, they fulfill other roles. But if you can find a mentor, they're usually boring, stoic. They don't want to do much. We call them a plug. But that's the horse you want to study because that's who you want to emulate with your horse. And watching how these guys can create calm in an entire group is profound.
Because they'll stand there and there'll be one, say we have 4 horses in an arena. The mentor will stand there and the other 3 are tearing up,
doing stuff.
And he's just like, this is...
But he takes one step.
Yeah. And then he's like, that's enough, boys.
And they stop. Mm-hmm. So you want to emulate that, right? But when we're, when we have horses that have varying degrees of childhoods, it's kind of like, domestic horses are kind of like all foster kids. And they've been placed in all these different group homes.
And we're working with a horse who's off the track, weaned at 3.5 months, and is having some highly emotional problems because they don't know they're really their own language.
Yeah.
Is really feeling unconfident and nervous and space invading, but there's some progress just with a couple phone sessions. One was not even live with the horse. It's just like, oh, we watched a little video and just give some pointers, and within a week, massive transformation.
And this is after this person's on this horse for like 10 years.
Wow.
So when, the cool thing about this is, because of my work at rescues, it was also, I was paring down what are the key things you can do at a key moment that has massive impact for the horse's sense of well-being.
With minimal effort.
With minimal effort on my side. Maybe I'm not even in the pen with them. You can literally be on the other side of a pen and have a whole conversation and have a breakthrough, and you never touched them. And that's power. You know, being able to have that kind of power. You can start your lunging session from the outside of a pen or from across the field. There's so much that can happen when you know how to use your body as a tool of communication.
And in Sharon's second book, Horses in Translation, she talks about the horse in the hill. And that day when we went and experienced this horse in the hill, he was the unapproachable horse. He didn't want to be with people or anything. And so this horse was probably a couple 100 feet away, and that's nice. She's adjusting the lighting. Sharon is walking back and forth and doing eyes and licking, chewing, going go away face, different gestures, probably for not even 5 minutes. And then we're just like milling around. It's icy. It was like March or something. So we then go up to the hill, and Sharon just did a little bit of posture. She did kneel down, and that horse came over within 30 seconds.
Wow. Wow.
Months.
Yeah.
And then he went to the other people. He was like, well, now that you figured it out, let me go say hi to everybody else.
Because you all must be smart now, right? Wow. That's just really, really, really cool. Really cool. So now I'm going to say, because I'm going to be the skeptical watcher of this show. So I'm a dressage person, and I compete, and things like that. And now you're really blowing my mind with this, and this is going to take a lot of work, and I'm not going to be able to put this into my dressage, or, I'm just using because I'm a dressage person, but, we could take it to any other discipline. So I guess question within a question. One is, how obviously this has profound implications, right? So if your horse is relaxed and you're bonded, and we want to have that better communication anyways, that's going to be great for competition, for my art, for my exhibition, whatever I'm doing. But then how do I incorporate this in a way where I'm not feeling like I've got to go get a PhD in this, or I've got to spend an extra 40 minutes communicating? So what would you say to that person who's watching?
Two things. That's a great question. First of all, backstory. When I was an intercollegiate coach at the college for the students with learning disabilities. And so we're going to competitions.
Against schools with scouted talent.
Right.
And a lot of them never rode a horse before that she was bringing to the class. The lighting is really funky. So that's a backstory. And our school came in, the year that I took over, our school came in 4th in the region.
Wow.
Because my kids could get on any horse and calm it down in 2 seconds. And this is not, you can't do any of the groundwork. You can't do any body language from the ground. You just have someone's holding the horse, you get on and you ride. But they had enough understanding of how to use this body language from the saddle that by the time they get to the gate, the horse is like, oh, you're all right. That's okay. I'll just do the thing. And so that's why we did so well. And from there, some of these students went on to become farriers, trainers, therapeutic riding instructors, because they fell in love with the possibility of what can happen in the relationship. So the second thing is, you can do pretty much any one thing from the book, from Horse Speak. You can go do one thing. You could go have a mirroring session with your horse, and it's going to improve your riding, because suddenly you're going to go, aha, I mirrored my horse and he's sticky in the left shoulder all by himself. But when I opened my left shoulder in the mirroring session, he did too.
Yeah.
So just really practical, like,
walking up to your horse, you stop for a second, do a go away face,
and breathe.
And blink.
You're just saying, hey, I'm here.
Nod your head.
I'm approaching, and I don't want to freak you out.
Yeah. Or even one of the great things is to take a few steps forward, nod your head, do a go away face, take a couple steps back, and then watch to see if your horse will come to you. I had my horse leave her hay pile because I did that, because I did approach and I backed up a couple steps.
Which is similar, like this is approach and retreat has been in the horse world, but this
Yeah.
is different because it's not just approach and retreat. I'm doing a technique.
Right.
It's like, hi, I'm coming in.
And I'm blinking
and I'm blinking,
smacking
and
my
I'm
lips.
breathing, and I'm nodding my head, a little bit of yes and no, because that says to the pole, you can just relax, all that stuff. So when you give messages of soothing and calm in your body language, they intrinsically understand it because they do the same kinds of messages. So really, it's taking advantage of what you've got, which is yourself, to have a better connection. Because like we said, horses can collect from a place of fear.
Yes. Yeah.
Like from a place of panic or a place of fighting or anger or being shut down and just physically collecting but not really being there, or they can collect from a place of pride. So pride is where everything happens.
Right. Yeah. And you can definitely feel the difference. You know, I know it. We joke. Dory she's a little pee-off machine. She's a very beautiful pee-off when she's proud. And then she has the stompy, you know, pee-off. Yeah. So, you know, no, I totally hear you. And it is that pride, right? And she loves to have an audience. I have no doubt she'll do excellent in the show ring because she loves to be watched. And as soon as she knows that people are watching her, you know, I mean, just opens right up, right? So yeah, and you can feel that. I mean, that's not woo-woo. Like you can feel the energy, the difference in that carriage, right?
And our nervous systems will entrain.
Mm-hmm.
They will become synced up and harmonized, or they won't. And so if we're trying to take more breaths, give more pause, step out of the bubble a minute and see what you can see, because we get so in it, you know, step back for a moment. And again, going all the way back to something we said in the beginning, horses don't process like dogs do, and they don't process like we do. It literally has to go all the way through their body, and the tail has to do a little bit of something, or the hips have to do a little something for them to go, aha. Then they're committed to emotion. So if your horse is uncertain and they haven't had a chance to process, and they're always just, you know, catching themselves from falling down. So it's not like you have to wait for this 2-minute process every single time. You do it
like once, and then
they get it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, and then they can ask you, I need a process minute. Can I have a process minute? And you understand what it is. And you go, yeah, have your process minute. And then they come out of it and go, thanks. I think you meant this.
Mm-hmm.
And then they even one up you, like, I think it would be better like this. And that's where the pride shows.
Yeah. And you know, what's really cool about this when you're talking about this is, you know, studying some of the old masters and doing some of the classical is, you know, and I do see this with some of the Western trainers as well, as, you know, the horse is doing something, they got the little, you know, we can call it a try or whatever, but then you stop and you wait, you just stand there and you just let it, and depending on what that is, right, sometimes I'll wait for 30 seconds or a minute, or I'll be like, hey, that was excellent, and we're done, right? We're just going to go back and you're going to go out and we're cool. But, you know, I think I'm wondering, you know, well, it sounds like that the people, I think, intuitively knew some of this, yes, right? And, you know, over centuries, but not had the framework of a language, right, to really get that, right? You know, or to reteach it, right? Because we talk a lot about feel, and we talk a lot about you just know when you know, and, you know, and I don't want to, because there's not a woo-woo aspect of this, but there's that aspect of some people just get it and other people don't, right? You know, and but it sounds like everybody can really access this, yes, and have a shot at it, you know?
Because of the work with volunteers, I did a lot of volunteer training at rescues. So that's people with every walk of life. I did a lot of volunteer training at therapeutic riding centers, and a lot of rehabbing therapy, you know, riding horses, school horses. And because of that, it's imperative that people can find a feel and not have it be like this mystery thing.
Yeah.
It's literally a combination of cognitive awareness of what you're looking for, matched with an empathy response.
Yeah.
And that's what skill is.
Yeah, and which makes it extremely accessible. So we could be going on for hours and hours, and I'm just loving this, but I realize we're almost at a 90-minute mark. So, and we've just been going, so which is really, really great. So one of the things that I always end an interview with is with my guests is to ask them what was an aha moment with when you were working with horses that you would want to share with everybody.
I mean, for me personally, like besides like how amazing speaking their language is, which is totally amazing. I think because I had a dressage background too, I was a hunter jumper and then I was moved to dressage. And when I understood what balance means to a horse, because I knew what balance meant to me, I knew about in handwork and I knew, all the la 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 la, but I didn't know what it meant to them for their own perspective. And when I started to realize how things are knit together, and it starts with their sense of well-being in the world through their feet. So if you're moving their feet without consciousness, like there's a saying, the horse has got to move his feet. Okay,
Yeah,
you got him to move his feet, but how did he move his feet? Because if he didn't move them well, he went out of emotional balance like that. And he didn't learn anything. He might have gotten the rote muscle memory, but he didn't learn anything. And then all those horses ended up at my doorstep. So, so I think I've kind of worked with so many rehab horses that are really broken physically, like broken bones, all kinds of stuff. And like the in-hand work was going to be too much. It's not going to, or they psychologically can't even put a halter on them. But how can you influence their sense of well-being? How can you start to have an effect on their balance? And that's little things like rocking the baby, because I'm just talking about my balance. I'm just rocking. And horses look at that and they go, no kidding. And then they start to readjust all by themselves because you're suggesting it. So I think realizing that there's this really simple, profoundly beautiful ways to inspire not only the connection that your heart is seeking, but some of the goals that you have, and that they go together. It's not like one or the other. So to me, that was my that was when I was like, yes.
No, that's really great. Thank you. And Laura, do you have one that you want to share?
What I was thinking is that, my background really was interesting as a youth, where I was around horses that were a bit dangerous. And every time I did ride a horse, it was epically horrible. I was always on the ground.
I was going to say, sounds like mine.
In the thoroughbred world, at the track, I did have that misty morning where I was like, oh, I really craved.
She wanted to be a jockey.
I wanted to be a jockey or do exercise or something in that regard. And then things just shifted and I completely got out of being around horses. And then I was gifted to have met Sharon at the rescue where I had adopted a PMU filly, and she was 6 months old. And so it was the moment where she was totally all in with me. And then she turned 2. And she was like, you can't make me move. And I'm like, okay. Here we are. And I'm like, I didn't know. I was totally dumbfounded. I had no idea what to do with this horse. So I walked her pen mate. And so then we could walk. She would be loose because it was a closed area. And so that's how we were able to, find our way. But then Sharon was able to specifically help me. And then at this point, that was 12 years ago. And so now where horse speak is, become horse speak, the thing that I enjoy the most is that it's a practice. I have a foundation of understanding their language and different things that I can do within my body. And I love to be out with the ponies and be like, hey, let's try this today and see what the outcome is. Because that's the thing I would love for folks who are listening to just, it's not like we're drilling a thing. It's like, hey, I asked you a question. What do you think of it? I made the suggestion. I'm going to touch your backup button and your jump up button at the same time. How is that for you? And then you take a step back and watch and see what kind of effect you had on the animal. And usually it's just super to just not have like, oh, she didn't do the thing. It's like, no, she had her own personal experience with what you asked. And that it's like, it's a huge gift. And, you know, with learning the mechanics of horse speak, it's like, if you don't have the feel, that's fine.
Yeah,
because when you do
Yeah.
the mechanics, it actually, in the long run, it creates the feel. And then you're like, oh, wow, you know, and you notice these changes and all that. And so it's like, it doesn't matter. You just, the postures is what matters. And knowing that I have a tool belt full of different things to be able to try to help my horse to feel good in their body.
Yeah, and the thing that I like, what we were talking about with the conversation, like I said, I powered through the first half of the book. I'm going to have to power through the second half of the book. But the thing that I liked about it is that you have I like to use the word framework versus a system, right? Because a system kind of implies rigidity, but there's a framework that's consistent, right? And I can play with it, I can experiment with it. And it is not, you know, and it's applicable, I can use it, it's very plastic, right? Where, you know, if I'm doing dressage or I'm a reiner or I trail ride or whatever, right? That has benefit, and I can play with it, and I can do it in 5 minutes, or I could do it in an hour, right? With that. So that's, you know, that's so cool that you guys put that together, and you know, are able to really give that gift to people, which is just really, I mean, I got so much out of the 2 books. I was so shocked when I did the fist bump, you know, and it was just really, really cool, you know. Yeah.
I mean, when we had the wild horses coming up to the group and volunteering to come and greet people in the group, they'd never done that before with this, you know, it just doesn't happen. But we did the right postures, and they were like, no kidding, people learned how to talk, I guess I'll go talk to them.
Yeah, and I was able to ask a horse this by doing a lot of different relaxation things to have this wild horse lay down, and then she came over to me.
Wow.
It was super.
Wow.
And we were one of these gals that was in Germany. We went live FaceTime with her.
She went back.
She went back to the herd, and the horses
wouldn't leave her alone.
And I'm like, you're gonna get thrown out of there. Like, I was having to shoo them away because, you know, we were just so wanting to talk. It was really profound.
So like, the whole Mustang thing, you know, being just so impossible.
Yeah.
And I'm working with someone right now who's a professional Mustang rehabber, and she's just like, holy cow, she's still using, and this is where the 2 combine, she's still using a lot of the tactics and stuff that she's learned over the years, but she's like, with like minimal effort, like almost nothing. And I'm getting so much done the first couple of days on the outside of the pen. By the time I get in, they're like, hi, how can, and she's like,
took you forever to get in here.
Yeah, and you know, stuff that used to take her months and months and months, she can do it like in a couple of days because she can approach with the language. So it's cool on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, I can just tell you on the little experimental level, you know, I came in and I was like, so we were going to go do a hack. This is, you know, for me, that's kind of a little bit of an epic thing for my horse, right? You know, she gets nervous about that. And, you know, but that fist bump thing, like it totally changed the whole dynamic, you know, even tacking up and everything, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, I could tell just from just a little tiny bit that I did, it has, you know, it had a really profound impact on my day in a positive way, right? So, yeah, no, it was great. Well, guys, thank you so much. We could probably go on for 4 hours. So actually, I would love to have you come back because, you know what, I have a million questions about Under the Saddle, which we didn't even talk about at all. But this was great. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know I could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
And talking like it's interesting actually to talk about dogs as well.
Yeah, we do another one about dogs, right? Because you know, how many horse people have dogs? A lot. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. This has been Under the Forelock. Thank you so much.